Before you know it, folks are getting a big dose of the gimmies. And men start talking their hats off, and that Manischewitz grapevine wine spills in your ear and tells you got a sure thing, and what's worse is, you start to believe it.
Hello folks, and welcome to Mr. Peacock's Square Plays of week number 6. Football against the number, live, always, from Midtown Atlanta. Let's talk about last week, 3-2. Unfortunately, our 5-star lock of the month was a 5-star flop of the month. UGA minus 2.5 against Alabama, and I'm not going to really belabor that game a whole lot. I will say, I sat right here in this studio and I told you that the Georgia Bulldogs were going to make a statement to the rest of the country on Saturday afternoon last week, and I was right about that. I was right on the money about that. The other stuff, maybe not so much. Other games, though, that we hit, really went pretty well. Northwestern Minnesota, easy under the total of 40.5 points. It helps when there's a shutout in that. Vanderbilt with a backdoor cover, catching 2 points at Middle Tennessee down in Murfreesboro. Real late touchdown. Vandy was a straight-up winner. And finally, the Texas A&M Aggies laying 6.5 points at home against Mississippi State. Pretty easy cover there as well. So, we're going to dive right now into Week 6 action, folks, and we are leaving our plush Midtown Atlanta studios, and we're going to the Atlanta airport because I don't feel like making this drive. Folks, we are flying to Detroit, Michigan, okay? And we're getting in a rental car. We're going to try to upgrade a little bit there at the counter. They know why they take reservations. They don't know why they hold the reservation or how. Folks, I like at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, which I assume is also local time, the Northwestern Wildcats catching 7.5 points against the Michigan Wolverines. But Mr. Peacock, have you not seen how well Michigan's been playing? I have, but I think that a lot of what Michigan has done has come against some very subpar competition. The only, I think, really legitimate team that Michigan has played this year so far is Utah, who beat them pretty handily in Week 1. Northwestern is much more battle-tested in this one, having already played Stanford, having already gone on the road and played a pretty good Duke team as well. And frankly, I think that Minnesota's better than anybody that Michigan's played this year, too, outside of Utah. So I definitely think that Northwestern's a more battle-tested team here. Michigan is definitely a very public team, and I think that affects the line a little bit as well. Northwestern really just does not get a whole lot of love from the public, but they are a little bit of a cover machine. In fact, the Northwestern Wildcats are perfect 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 games as an underdog, and that includes 4 straight-up wins in that. I think it's actually their last 4 that they've won straight up as an underdog. Northwestern's defense is way too good for them to be catching a touchdown plus, no matter where they're playing. I think Northwestern's going to win this game straight up. I love them to death, plus 7.5. Game number 2. We're going to West Lafayette, Indiana, folks. I've never been there. But Mr. Peacock, why do we have to stay in the Big Ten? Well, because this is where the money is, all right? This is where we're going to make some money this week. At 3:30 p.m. Eastern, I have no idea what network this is on, I like the Minnesota Golden Gophers laying 3 points on the road at Purdue. Listen, Minnesota hasn't been a very good cover team this year. We were on them the last time they covered this year, the only time they covered this year at home against Texas Christian. Purdue's just a really bad team. I mean, that's the bottom line. Golly, how many times have they given up, 40, 50 points this year? It's just a really, really bad defense that Purdue's sporting there. The other reason that I like this, Purdue had an emotional 4-quarter game. They played about as well, it looked like, as they could possibly play up at East Lansing against Michigan State last week and just came up a little bit short. It's real tough to duplicate that 2 weeks in a row. Minnesota's been scuffling a little bit. Their schedule's about to get easier. They're about to get things figured out. I really like Jerry Kill. I think he's one of the best and most underrated coaches in the country. He'll get this thing back on track, and it starts on Saturday afternoon in West Lafayette, Indiana. So this is going to be an easy win, I feel like, for Minnesota. So take Mini minus 3. Game number 3, we're going to Columbia, Missouri. Folks have been there. Way out I-70 in the middle of the state. There is a Waffle House, though. I was glad to see it, too. At 7 or 7:30, I don't know. I mean, it's a night game. You'll find it. It's a fishy looking line. It's all the way down to 3.5. Missouri catching 3.5 only against Florida, and everybody saw what Florida did last week. So I'm real tempted to jump on the Tigers, but I can see this being a 4 or 5 point game. The play, though, that I really like here is the total, and specifically the over of a very, very low 38 points. Yes, I have watched Missouri play this year, and yes, I do know how good Florida's defense is, but I want to point out 2 things. One, Missouri's offense looks like it's getting a little bit better with Drew Lock. It looked like they kind of kept things close to the vest last week with Lock making his first start. And I think they're probably going to open it up a little bit this week against Florida. Florida's offense, too, is getting better every time out. And if you're a Georgia fan, that ought to scare you. It scares me. But I think that Florida's going to be able to score some points, too. You know, these two teams have been involved in a couple of really low-scoring affairs so far this season. And I don't think that they're going to light the scoreboard up like a Christmas tree in this. But I think that this game's going to get up to 45 or 50, and I think it'll definitely go over 38 points. The first time I saw that, it was at 39.5, and it's actually gotten bet down a little bit from there. But like I say, that one just really jumped out at me. And then my first thought, and every subsequent thought that I've had about it, was that's going to go over the total. So that's the play I like. Florida, Missouri over 38 points. Game number 4. We are going to Tucson, Arizona, folks. I've been there. This gives me no pleasure because I kind of do like Oregon State a little bit. I don't like them when it comes to betting, though. But, I like the school. It's a nice campus. I've been to a football game there, been to some baseball games there. I've been to some baseball games at Arizona, too, for that matter. But, I do like Oregon State. I don't like betting against them. But I'm going to do it here. I like the Arizona Wildcats laying 10.5 points at home against Oregon State. Mr. Peacock, are you insane? Insane, I ask you. Do you not understand that the Arizona Wildcats have allowed 111 points in their last 2 games? I do understand that. I do understand that well. The 2 teams that they played in those 2 were UCLA and Stanford. How do you fix your defensive woes? Well, there's several things you can do. One of which is to play a team that doesn't play a lot of offense. And that's what Arizona's going to do this week. Oregon State just doesn't really score a lot of points. And they just don't really run away from anybody either. It's been a real struggle for them this year offensively, and defensively they're not very good as well. I think this is going to be a pretty lopsided, easy win for Arizona. Arizona is a heck of a lot more talented than they've shown the last 2 weeks, and they're a much better team than they've shown the last 2 weeks also. They're going to get the ship righted, and I think, honestly, they're probably going to win this thing by about 4 touchdowns on Saturday. A rare 1 o'clock kick in Tucson, 1 o'clock local time in Tucson. Or maybe it's 2 o'clock. They do that weird thing where they don't set the clocks forward or backwards, which I'm envious of. So it may be at 2 o'clock. I don't know. It's 4 o'clock Eastern. I do know that. And we'll be paying attention to it. So again, Arizona minus 10.5. Turning now to our mailbag. This week's letter comes to us from Bob from Winchester, Tennessee. Bob writes, "Sorry about the dogs, but the sun did rise on Sunday morning." Well, Bob, I appreciate the kind words there, and it is classy. But I have to say that I never quite understood why a catastrophe or disappointment was always measured against the standard of the sun failing to rise. It seems to me that it would take a disaster literally of astronomical proportions to stop the Earth from rotating on its axis. And also, by just about any measure that I've seen, the sun has about 4 billion years left of hydrogen that it can fuse into helium to keep shining. And it'll shine for, 100,000 years probably after that anyway. So I've never really worried about the sun failing to rise, and I've never really considered that a tragedy or disappointment is any less significant because the sun will in fact rise the next day. I would say that, based on the things that I've read and seen, I think that an all-out nuclear war, where every nuclear weapon is detonated with the baddest of intentions around the entire world, I think we could probably wipe out about 90% of humanity doing that. I don't think we could kill everybody. I haven't seen anything to indicate that, but probably about 90%. Okay, that would literally be, without question, the worst day in human history, and yet the sun would still rise the next day. Okay, it might be concealed under a very thick cloud, but the sun would still rise. That would not make the tragedy any less significant, and that would not make the disappointment or the hurt any less so. And while we're on the topic of cliches like that, I don't really understand the one either, wanting one hand and crapping the other and see which one draws flies. I mean, we've never really established the value of something based on its propensity to draw flies, to attract insects. That doesn't make any sense to me either. So, Bob, I appreciate the letter. Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but you're correct. The sun did rise on Sunday morning, and it rose on a very disappointed Mr. Peacock. So real quick, to recap, Week 6. Folks, we're getting started off in Big Ten action, Big Ten country. We like the Northwestern Wildcats catching 7.5 points on the road at Michigan. We like the Minnesota Gilded Gophers laying 3 points on the road at Purdue. We like the Florida Gators and the Missouri Tigers playing a football game over a low total of 38 points. And finally, we like the Arizona Wildcats laying 10.5 points at home against the Beavers from Oregon State. So, folks, I wish you the best of luck. I will see you next week for week number 7. Thanks.